Hello again. So, I have another story for you, which is all about the final fight between player and the BBEG. Big Bad Evil Guy, if you don't really know. So, a quick rundown about these characters. They were played by Hev, Isaac, and Dan. And they were playing. Hev was playing Jay, an emotionally involved pyromancer mutant who had who can like shapeshift between him and his sister Will. And there was Dan, who was playing Jingles, who also had like a shapeshifting thing, but with an evil clown that got separated from his body into a mannequin, who is now a mannequin killing clown. Bear with me. And then we've got Pim, who was originally called Mavis, like a little old lady called Mavis, who can then morph into Pim, which is like this big panda bat creature with huge ears, dripping fangs, and whole gimmick was basically picking people up, flying upwards, and then plummeting them down to their deaths. That was a fun character. Just a bit of background, Isaac is was new to my game at this point. This is my own game, Mutated, that we're using, and he wanted to break my game. His aim was to choose races and abilities that would completely just obliterate anyone that came near him. And it worked. Jay, on the other hand, was an Adam and Eve race, so they could do the shapeshifting thing, but they were magically gifted and were able to use pyrokinesis and fire and all that to basically burn everything that they saw. And Jingles, Dan just likes to have fun with his characters and just choose things that sometimes doesn't benefit the actual build of the character, and just likes to go for things that would work well with his character. He's really good with that kind of stuff. But by the by, these three mutants were created by none other than Dr. Fiddleflesh. You may recognise that name from the Flesh and Blood story that I shared quite a while ago. But this was just to experiment. I like to use him as like my go-to doctor. He's my canon mutant creator, if you will, for this game. And I wanted to see if I could play him differently and see him more as like, rather than him having a change of heart with empathy, this guy just cared about being the god of creation. He still was still caring with his mutants. He still helped them out, and he still didn't treat disrespect in a nice way. He still was quite ruthless, but he never really apologized to his mutants because these were obviously innocent people before they got changed. It turns out when they were getting their memories back, the mutants, every so often they would dream and get some memories back of who they once were in a past life. I made it so that Dr. Fiddleflesh was in fact an evil guy. Jay was carrying a near-dead Will to the hospital, like the surgery, where he was then knocked out and then experimented on, and their consciousnesses were kind of fused together. And then we have Jingles, who was in an asylum, like an asylum that he didn't belong in. He made a story up that he was seeing a clown in the asylum because his love interest was one of the other doctors. And if he left the asylum, he would never see that doctor again. So he made up a story about seeing this clown. Kind of, you might be thinking Inside Number 9 story about the silent singer, and you would be right. And I respect you for having such good taste in dark comedies. So by the by, Fiddleflesh had injected Jingles with a kind of concoction that allowed him to actually physically see this killer clown and become the killer clown. He was like possessed by his own imagination, if you will. It's quite crazy. And Mavis was in fact kidnapped by Jay and Jingles for their first task for the professor to do experiment on, so he could make another mutant, which was of course Isaac's character because he joined the game late. Anyways, that's not why you called. They'd gone through this whole campaign. I may do a Flesh and Blood-esque story arc about their entire story so you could hear about it all. But so I suppose that'll be spoilers for that story. But yes, they fought Fiddleflesh, who had 3 other mutants, I think. Yep, 3 other mutants, who turned out to be Mavis's old friends. I think it was Jasmine and I can't remember the names. Doesn't matter. Anyways. So there was Jasmine and this witch girl who was new to the group, and she was scared and terrified about what was going on. and they were in this big church, like this big empty abandoned church. Fiddleflash had loads of little orbs that did various different things, giving him resistances, legendary resistances, legendary actions. They all took their own turns right after Fiddleflash. Fiddleflash had like loads of actions where he could like use his claw, cannon arm. He dealt a lot of damage. He was quite a force to be reckoned with. One other thing he had was he was able to enchant his mutants by possessing them in a way, by charming them, if you will, in D&D terms. So the fight was quite hard. There was a lot of blood loss and a lot of like tension, and it got to the point where Fiddleflash was down to below half his hit points. So he used blessings from a god, which was Meth, and he went absolutely insane. Where like I think damage wise was reduced by like 2 halves, like 3/4 damage resistance or something. And he had an extra attack per turn. He was absolutely mental, just going absolutely buck wild on his own mutants. And I think it got to the point where he was on such low health, and everyone was kind of, I think everyone did really well actually, thinking about it. Yeah. So Fiddleflash was kind of surrounded, and he was kind of in this like mental like, I'm going to take you all apart and rebuild you into something even better. Like proper like mental crazy. And I said it was Jay's turn. I was like, right, Jay, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to do? He said, I'm going to summon my truck. Now, bearing in mind, this is when I was experimenting with magic, and I said that Jay could summon a truck at will. Hev is, of course, a trucker, so I allowed it. Early in the game, I just allowed that Jay could just summon this truck at will, which he could. And I said, okay, where do I summon it from? And said, I want to summon it from over there by the window. And I was like, okay. And I was just thinking about it, because how she always described the truck coming in from was driving through a portal of hell and then driving towards Jay. So I said, alright. So I rolled a dodge check for Fiddleflash to get out of the way. And he failed. And then I said to Jay, so what I'm going to do is roll 1d10 per 5 foot this truck has drove. From where the window was to where Fiddleflash was to where Jay was, you're looking at about, and as I calculated it, I was like, oh my god, there's like 15 d10s worth of damage here. The amount of 10s that they rolled, oh my god. It basically, the final strike to Fiddleflash was Jay clicking his fingers, that was pathetic, and the truck knocked over Fiddleflash, knocking him out instantly. And that was how the party defeated the big bad evil guy, summoning a truck to run them over. It was so cartoony, so stupid, that I thought it was the perfect end to this really bizarre world that they were in. Long story short, they ended up surviving, and Fiddleflash was arrested. And yeah, it was great. It was a fantastic campaign, and that ending was, I think, just the perfect way to end that campaign. Have you guys had any really interesting ways that the big bad evil guy was defeated? Was there like a, Tasha's hideous laughter casted on an enemy at any point that just completely killed the big bad evil guy? Is there any stories like that you guys might be able to share? I always find big bad evil guy like grand finale boss fights to be really interesting to hear. I've kind of got maybe one coming up in one of the campaigns that I'm in with my boy Azrael, so have your fingers crossed for me. But yeah, being knocked over by a truck that you summon from the pits of hell, that's a way to go. That's a way to go. Talk soon, guys. Bye.